So last Wednesday, the House of Representatives passed a voting rights bill called H.R.1 for the People Act, as they call it. And it is now making its way through the Senate. And of course, they are filibustering. And what I want to do is play for you a clip of Tommy Tuberville blabbering on about nonsense. Take a listen and then we'll talk about it.
Madam President.
The junior senator from Alabama.
Madam President, I rise today to discuss a piece of legislation we may soon consider in this body called H.R.1. H.R.1 does not solve the problems currently facing our election system. It makes the problems worse. Democrats have labeled the bill For the People Act, but it really should be called For the Democrats Act. This partisan bill represents the largest federal power grab in decades, and that's saying a lot after Democrats rammed through a partisan $1.9 trillion stimulus bill just 2 weeks ago. The American people elected 50 Republican senators, but the Democrats are happy to cut out half the chamber and the millions of Americans we represent to get what they want. H.R.1 would completely rewrite our election laws, hijacking power from the states and giving it to the federal government to dictate how our elections are run. This type of top-down approach is the opposite of our founding principles of self-government. Article 1, Section 4 of the Constitution grants states the authority to manage their federal election processes. H.R. 1 would take that away. The changes to our free and federal elections that H.R. 1 proposes should concern every single American. This bill forces a one-size-fits-all election system on our country by federally mandating how states run their elections. This phrase, for the people, means allowing citizens to choose their own leaders and voting processes, not Washington dictating new rules of the game.
Okay, so what you just saw right there was a bunch of lies, and that's what an individual that doesn't know what he's talking about looks like. So, first and foremost, I am a native Alabamian. I was born and raised here in Alabama. It's where I currently live. For how much longer, I'm not sure, because I do graduate soon. But that's neither here nor there. This guy is an embarrassment to be one of our political leaders. I mean, that's just the truth of the matter. It's insane that he even got the votes to get elected. And, you know, Doug Jones was a typical corporate Democrat, but he's much better than this idiot. I remember like a couple months ago, I think it was a while back, there was this, like a lot of people were hounding this guy, Tommy Tuberville, because he couldn't name the three factions of government. You know, he couldn't do it. And as far as history goes, I'm sure he doesn't know anything about the history of this country, anything that's relevant, any of the important things, but he's just a guy. I think he's like a retired football coach or something like that. Somehow worked his way into a Senate seat, which apparently anybody can do nowadays. You got Marjorie Taylor Greene, you know, Matt Gaetz, among others that have just squirmed their way in there. So if you're a Republican and if you have a particular set of ideals, you can get elected easily, apparently. But that's neither here nor there. So he's talking about H.R. 1 there, and he calls it For the Democrats Act. But before we get into that, he says H.R. 1 makes the problems of this country and pertains to voting worse. And I don't understand. How is that? How is that? How does it make it worse? So it's a long bill. It's very extensive, but I'm just going to read you a couple of things that it does, okay? Because it makes it worse. It makes it worse. Okay, watch this. Okay, so the bill includes nationwide automatic and election day registration, 2 weeks of early voting in every state, the expansion of mail-in voting, the restoration of voting rights to people convicted of a felony who have served their time, restrictions on discriminatory voter ID laws and voter purges, and the creation of independent redistricting commissions for the House districts to prevent extreme gerrymandering. And this is probably my favorite here. The bill also cracks down on dark money by implementing public financing for congressional campaigns, and it establishes new ethics rules for federal office holders. So what that one basically means is they're kind of putting a cap on how much corrupt money these different corporations and entities can fuel into political campaigns, okay? And they're trying to make them more publicly financed, which is absolutely amazing. Elections should be publicly financed, and that should be it, okay? Because we know what money does to these politicians. It influences them to the max. But he calls it For the Democrats Act. That doesn't sound like it'll just be for the Democrats. It sounds like it'll be for people that vote. He says that it's a partisan bill that represents the largest federal power grab in decades. Wow. He says that they also pushed through the partisan $1.9 trillion stimulus bill. Well, guess what? That was a partisan bill because none of the Republicans supported it. But guess who did support it? The American people. The Democrats aren't there to please the Republicans, no matter how it may seem at times, okay, with their bipartisan bullshit. And we'll get into that in a second, okay? But they're there to represent the American people. The vast majority of the American people supported the $1.9 trillion stimulus bill. CNN did a video. I urge you to go look this up on how people in West Virginia were satisfied with the stimulus bill. And the overwhelmingly majority of them supported it. This is West Virginia now, a conservative state, right? But no, they're not economically conservative. They're socially conservative, okay? The vast majority of the American people want left populism. They want economically progressive politicians to be the ones that are leading, to be the driving force of this country, right? But we knew that already, okay? And actually, it's pretty funny that he says all this stuff. He demonized the federal government. He says that it's going to take the people's freedom away, the rights of the states to do what they want. So you have to throw the demonization of the federal government in there, right? Because Republican. But Republicans are actively cracking down on voting rights. Yeah, they are. Go check out the situation in Georgia. Republican lawmakers in Georgia, The Hill published an article on this. I don't have it in front of me right now, but they're actively trying to take away people's vote. They're trying to curb mail-in voting, so make it less likely for people to be able to mail in their vote. They're also taking off provisions that with the voter ID, something with the voter ID, H.R.1, I believe, makes it to where you can just write in a written statement instead of having your voter ID, but they're trying to overturn that. But I don't have the article in front of me, and there's many different intricacies, but the Republicans, the moral of the story is the Republicans are actually trying to make it more difficult for you to be able to vote. And if you remember back during the election, there was this thing called the Red Mirage, right? Because Donald Trump told his supporters explicitly, don't mail in vote. Don't do it. It's corrupt. You can't do it. Don't send in mail in votes. Go vote in person, right? So he actually lessened his chances of winning because a lot of Republicans, I didn't mean to say it, a lot of Republicans actually went out to the polls, okay? And it's the Democrats that are more inclined to vote by mail, especially when there's a deadly virus, because typically the Democratic people are more inclined to listen to the science and things of that nature. And so they'll stay in and they'll send out their mail-ins, and the Republicans will actually go to the polls. But by telling people not to send mail-in votes, you actually kind of curved a little bit of your votes by telling them not to do it, because some of those people maybe didn't go out to the polls. You know what I mean? And so when all of this happened, when they counted the in-person votes first, and then they finally got to the mail-ins, that's when the whole conspiracy theory, fraudulent election, rigged election, all this other bullshit, right? And so they're actively trying in certain states, Georgia is one of them that's very notable, that's why I brought it up, to crack down on voters and do voter suppression. That's what they're doing. And what H.R.1 does is the exact opposite. It's the exact opposite. It opens up to more people and allows more people to have different outlets and avenues that allows them to vote, such as securing a mail-in vote or what have you. Automatic voter and election day registration. That's amazing. Okay? But see, this is the thing with Republicans. They can't win you over with their policies. So what do? Let's crack down on the vote. Let's suppress the vote. Because what happens when you suppress the vote? The Republican is more likely to win. Because when more people vote, and this we've seen this throughout history, these are facts. The Democrat is more likely to win because the people are overwhelmingly Democratic. That's a fact. So, I mean, let's go through their policies. We got guns, patriotism, endless war, tax cuts for the rich. You can't win anybody on that. So what do? You rig the voting system to make it to where certain people can't vote because their policies suck so bad. And allow me to finish this off with a little bit of talk on bipartisanship. See, this is the language of a person, of a people that realizes that they're losing, that realizes that they're getting beaten. The Republicans realize it. This guy, Tommy Tuberville, realizes it. He realizes it. You see, they fall back on bipartisanship when they know that a bill such as this one would be incredibly popular with the American people. Yeah, expand voting rights. Yeah, please do that. That's what they want. So they fall back. Oh, we're not included. We're not included. It's the thing with the $1.9 trillion stimulus bill. That's all that they have. Oh, it was a partisan bill. They can't attack anything else because it helped the American people. Now, that bill had a lot of problems with it. But those issues are from the left, okay? Not from the right. Those issues are from the left. I mean, think about this for a second. Would the Republicans be screaming bipartisanship if they were trying to pass some new tax cuts or some new deregulation or whatever the fuck, like a new arms deal if they were in power? Would they be screaming like, oh, we have to do this bipartisan? No, they'd say, okay, Democrats, shut up. We're in power. We're going to pass what we want. That's what they did when Trump was in office. That's what they did. There was no bipartisan. Oh, now all of a sudden they're being left out. 50 elected Republican senators. Man, these guys, they're shameless. They're shameless. They have no shame whatsoever. And it's honestly quite disgusting. But these are the Republicans. Think back to FDR. When FDR won the election in 1932, he didn't extend his hand to all the beaten down Hooverites, and say, oh, look, we got to get through this together, guys. Let's get together. Bipartisanship will save the country. No, he didn't. He took the power that he had. He took the coalition that he had. He took his ideals. The socialists and the communists had band together to push him, right? They were there back in that time before they got purged. And he brought upon many great policies: Social Security, minimum wage, unemployment, jobs, just to name a few. He did that without the help of the Republicans. And he won 4 times as a result of it. And if you go look at an electoral map from when he would win elections, I mean, damn near wipe the slate clean. That's how you win 45 states. It can be done. We've seen it be done before. And then, you fast forward, someone like Obama comes around. I remember when he said he was like, his re-election would break the partisan fever or something like that. Like, no, that's not how it works. That's not how it works. You break the partisan fever by giving people an economically left choice. Give people the populism that they crave for, because that is what they crave for. But I know I'm kind of going on a tangent here. I'm talking about economics and supposed to be talking about voter rights. Anyway, this is Tommy Tuberville going on a rant about being left out, the Republicans being left out. This is a partisan bill, but it's actually quite sad to see.